Millionaire CEO didn't know he'd got his black secretary pregnant with twins until she showed up. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. Serafina Kane walked through the big office building, her high heels making a clicking sound on the shiny marble floor. It was Monday morning in New York City, and she was ready for another busy day. Serafina was very good at her job, but she also made sure not to stand out too much, especially in front of one person, her boss. She stepped into the fast elevator, and when it stopped at the 45th floor, she fixed her blazer. Her curly hair with little blonde streaks stayed neat even though the autumn air was damp. She knew that in a big city like New York, looking professional was very important. "Good morning, Serafina," said Elowen Carter, her best friend at work. Elowen sat 2 desks away from Serafina, close enough to be supportive but far enough to keep things professional. "Morning, Nye," Serafina said as she put down her coffee and turned on her computer. "Any big problems already?" "Just the usual Monday craziness." "Oh, and heads up, the boss is here early today. Something about a big business deal in Singapore." Serafina's fingers stopped for a tiny second. Cassian Williams, her boss, was a man who could change the mood of the whole office just by walking in. As if he had heard their conversation, his office door opened. Cassian walked out. He was very tall, with dark blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. His fancy suit probably cost more than Serafina's whole apartment rent, but on him it looked natural, like he was born to wear it. "Miss Kane," he said in his deep voice, looking straight at her. "Are the Singapore files ready?" "They're already on your desk, Mr. Williams," Serafina answered in a calm, professional voice, along with the market report and the updated presentations. For a second, his eyes showed something, maybe surprise, maybe something else. But then he went back to being serious. "Good. Meet me in my office in 5 minutes to discuss the board meeting." It wasn't a request. Serafina nodded, ignoring Elowen's curious look. Everyone in the office had noticed how Cassian treated Serafina differently, like she was more important than just an assistant. People whispered about it, but Serafina knew better. She had grown up in Brooklyn with a hardworking mom who was a nurse. She had learned that powerful men took what they wanted, and women like her had to be careful. 5 minutes later, Serafina walked into Cassian's office with her laptop. His office was huge, with big windows showing all of New York City. Everything inside was expensive and neat. He stood by the window, talking on the phone. He held up a finger to tell her to wait. Serafina sat down and for a moment watched him. The sunlight showed the sharp angles of his face. His suit fit perfectly, and she could smell his cologne mixed with the leather and coffee in his office. It was a familiar scent, one that made her feel no. She quickly stopped herself from thinking that way. "That won't work," Cassian said into the phone. "Change the terms and send it back today." Then he hung up and turned toward Serafina. His blue eyes found hers like he knew exactly where she was. "You're always so efficient, Miss Kane," he said, sitting down at his desk. "Do you ever sleep?" "Sleep is for people who haven't memorized the company rules, Mr. Williams," she said with a small smile. They had started having little moments like this more often, short, playful conversations. It was dangerous. They worked for an hour going over business reports. During these times, Serafina felt the most confused. When they were focused on work, he treated her like an equal, listening to her ideas. But sometimes when their hands accidentally touched or when she looked up and saw him watching her, she felt something else, something unspoken. "One more thing," Cassian said as she stood to leave. "There's a client dinner tonight with the Riverside Group. I need you to come." Serafina's heart skipped a beat. "Sir, that's usually for the account executives." "The CEO personally asked for you," he said. "Apparently they were very impressed with how you handled their last problem." She felt his eyes watching her closely. Business dinners meant small tables, soft lighting, and wine. "Of course," she said, "I'll update my schedule." "Good." His voice sounded slightly different. Was it her imagination? A car will pick you up at 7. Back at her desk, Serafina tried to focus, but her mind kept thinking about tonight. She had built her career by being professional and staying out of trouble. But lately, things were changing. Okay, spill, Elowen said in the break room. What happened in there? You were gone for over an hour. Just work, Nye. Elowen folded her arms. Uh-huh. Just work is why he kept staring at you during last week's meeting? You're imagining things, Serafina said, stirring her tea, but her hands shook a little. Honey, that man looks at you like you're water in a desert, Elowen said, and don't think I haven't noticed how you always say his full name, like you're trying to remind yourself who he is. Who he is, Serafina said firmly, is my boss, a powerful man who dates rich, fancy women, not girls from Brooklyn like me. Maybe that's exactly why he's interested, Elowen said softly, because you're real. Serafina shook her head. It doesn't matter. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. But as she walked back to her desk, she wondered if it was already too late. From his office, Cassian watched her. He told himself he was only keeping an eye on his best employee, but even he was starting to doubt that. That night, the black car drove Serafina through the rainy streets of New York. She checked her reflection in the window. Her emerald green blouse made her eyes stand out. Her curls were pinned up neatly. She looked professional, but also elegant. We're early, Miss Kane, the driver said. Mr. Williams is already at the restaurant. He wants to meet before the clients arrive. Of course he did. She stepped inside the fancy restaurant, away from the rain. The waiter led her to a corner table. When she saw Cassian, she almost stopped walking. His suit was a deep navy blue, making his eyes look even brighter. His tie was slightly loose, and something about that made her stomach flutter. You look stunning, he said quietly, pulling out her chair. He sounded surprised, like he wasn't expecting to say it. Thank you, she said, sitting down. The Riverside group is running late, about 40 minutes, he said. I ordered wine, unless you'd prefer something else? A waiter poured them a deep red wine, the kind that was way too expensive for her usual budget. Serafina took a small sip. Tell me something, Cassian said. Why did you choose to work at Williams Enterprises? Serafina blinked. Excuse me? 3 years ago, you could have worked anywhere. Why us? The truth was both easy and tricky. Serafina took a deep breath and said, You have the most women bosses in the whole business world, and I knew working here would be hard, but I like hard work. Cassian looked at her with something special in his eyes. No, you don't like easy paths, he said. That's one of the things He stopped and picked up his wine. One of the things that make you important to the company. The air between them felt like right before a big storm. Outside, the rain got louder against the windows. Mr. Williams, Cassian, he said. Please, we're not at work. His name felt warm on her tongue. Cassian, she said softly. Why did you really invite me here tonight? He held her gaze, and for the first time his serious look disappeared. Because when you're not around, I look for you, because you challenge me, surprise me, and make me think about things differently. Because his phone buzzed, cutting him off. The Riverside group canceled their meeting because of the rain. They would meet next week instead. Silence filled the room. They could go home now. They could pretend this moment never happened. That would be the smart thing to do. Have dinner with me, Cassian said suddenly. Not as your boss, not for work, just dinner. Serafina's heart beat fast. That would be breaking a rule. Some rules are meant to be broken, he said, leaning forward. One dinner, Serafina. Be real with me, the way you are with others, the way you're never real with me. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the rain, maybe it was how he said her name like it was something special, or maybe she was just lonely. Whatever the reason, she nodded. One dinner, she agreed, but not here. Cassian raised an eyebrow. Where then? If you want to see the real me, let's go somewhere real. No fancy restaurants, no expensive wine. A slow smile spread across his face, not his usual serious smile, but something real. Lead the way." 20 minutes later, they were in Brooklyn, running through the rain to a small restaurant called Maria's Kitchen. Inside, it smelled like home. Serafina, a woman in her 60s, hugged her. "Where have you been? And who is this handsome man?" "Maria, this is Cassian." "Cassian, this is Maria. She has been feeding me since college." Maria smiled warmly. "Any friend of Serafina's family, I'll bring your favorite dish." Cassian looked around at the red checkered tablecloths, the family photos on the walls, and the happy sounds from the kitchen. "This is wonderful," he said, and Serafina could hear he truly meant it. "It's real," she replied. "Sometimes real is better than perfect." They ate warm mac and cheese, garlic bread, and wine in regular glasses. As they talked, the walls between them crumbled. Cassian told her about growing up with a dad who cared more about money than hugs. Serafina told him about her mom working extra shifts, about studying with candles when they had no electricity, and about dreaming big when no one believed in her. "You're amazing," Cassian said, touching a curl of her hair. The touch sent a spark through her skin. "I'm just stubborn," she said, but she didn't move away. That too. His smile was warm and real. "Thank you for bringing me here, for letting me see this part of you." The rain had stopped when they left, but the streets were still wet, shining with city lights. They walked slowly, neither wanting the night to end. "My apartment is close," Serafina found herself saying. "Would you like some coffee?" Cassian stopped walking and turned to her. Under the streetlights, his face looked serious, soft. "Are you sure?" She wasn't sure of anything except how fast her heart was beating. Yes. Her apartment was small but warm, filled with books and photos. Cassian walked around, looking at everything, stopping at a picture of Serafina and her mom. "Coffee?" she asked, just to have something to do. "Serafina." His voice was low. She turned and suddenly he was close. "I don't want coffee." The air around them felt electric. He reached for her face slowly, giving her time to pull away. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. She didn't. Instead, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, like a question. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened. She tangled her fingers in his hair, forgetting all the reasons this was a bad idea, forgetting everything except how he made her feel. Hours later, they lay together, tangled in blankets, but questions started creeping into her mind. What had they done? How would they act at work? What would people say? Then Cassian pulled her close and kissed her shoulder, and for a little longer, none of those questions mattered. Neither of them knew that in 2 weeks, everything would change. That news was coming that could either tear them apart or bring them together forever. For now, they just held each other, pretending morning would never come. 2 weeks later, Serafina stood in the office bathroom, looking at her reflection. Her hands were shaking. She still remembered that night with Cassian, the way he touched her, the way he made her feel special. But now everything felt different. At first, everything had been great. Cassian had kissed her before leaving in the morning, promising to call. And he did. They talked for hours, sent secret smiles at work, and shared little messages that made her heart race. Then the Singapore merger happened. "Miss Kane?" Serafina turned. Cassian stood in his office doorway, dressed in a sharp gray suit. He looked like a stranger. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, he said. "Is everything ready?" She put on her best work face. "Yes, Mr. Williams. Everything is prepared." He nodded and turned away. "Good. That will be all." Serafina watched him go, her stomach churning. But it wasn't just her feelings that were making her sick. 3 days ago, she started feeling strange, dizzy, tired, and "You look like you've seen a ghost," Elowen said, setting down 2 cups of tea. "Here, you've been looking sick all morning." Serafina took the tea, grateful, just feeling a little off. Elowen sat on her desk and lowered her voice. "You've been different since that dinner. And don't think I haven't noticed how the boss has been acting weird too. What's going on?" "Nothing," Serafina said quickly, but her hand moved to her stomach. Elowen's eyes widened. Girl, are you? Board meeting, Serafina interrupted, standing up. But as she moved too fast, the room spun. She had to grab her desk. That's it, Elowen said. After this meeting, we're having lunch and you're telling me everything. The boardroom was full of important people. Cassian stood at the front, talking to Orion, his best friend and the company's money expert. The numbers don't add up, Orion said, frowning. They look fake. That's not possible, Cassian replied. I checked them myself. Serafina cleared her throat. Actually, sir, if I may. She stepped forward and showed a spreadsheet on her tablet. I found some mistakes in the numbers for the third quarter, so I made a new report, she said. For a moment, Cassian's serious face changed, and she saw the same look in his eyes that he had on that special night, but in an instant, he became serious again. Show me, he said. As Serafina explained the numbers, their fingers touched on the screen. A tiny spark ran through her, making her feel warm and dizzy. Suddenly, the room felt too small. The familiar sick feeling came back, even stronger this time. Miss Kane? Cassian's voice sounded far away. Are you okay? I just need some air, Serafina said, but her voice felt weak. Before everything went dark, the last thing she saw was Cassian's face. His serious mask cracked, showing real concern as he reached for her. When Serafina woke up, she was lying on a soft leather couch in Cassian's private office. His suit jacket was covering her. Cassian and Elowen were standing nearby, speaking softly. She's been working too much, Elowen said. The long hours are too much for her. I'm fine, Serafina interrupted, trying to sit up. Cassian was by her side instantly, his hand on her shoulder. Don't move, he said. His voice was firm, but his touch was gentle. The doctor is coming. I don't need a doctor. She moved his hand away, even though she missed the warmth. I just got dizzy, that's all. Serafina? It was the first time he had called her by her first name in the office. Please. Something in his voice made her look at him closely. Behind his calm face, she saw fear, the same fear she had felt in her heart for days. Fine, she sighed, but I don't need an audience. Cassian nodded at Elowen, who gave Serafina's hand a squeeze before leaving. When they were alone, the silence between them was heavy. Why have you been avoiding me? Serafina finally asked in a small voice. Cassian turned to the window, his back to her. I haven't. Don't lie to me. Her voice was sharp. Not after everything. He was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he turned to her, his face filled with emotions. Because I can't stop thinking about you, he admitted. Because every time I see you, I want to touch you, hold you, be with you. Because I'm losing control, and I can't afford to lose control. So you shut me out? Her anger gave her strength, and she stood up, though she felt a little unsteady. You made me feel like that night meant nothing. That night meant everything, he said in a rough voice. He moved closer, steadying her. That's the problem. I have spent my whole life building walls, protecting myself from anything that could hurt me. But then you came along with your smart mind and kind heart, and suddenly my walls don't matter. His hands were warm on her arms. Without thinking, she leaned into his touch. Cassian, the Singapore deal is important, he continued. The board is watching my every move. If they think I'm distracted, if they think my feelings are affecting my judgment. So I'm a distraction? She pulled away from him. I'm just a problem for your precious deal? No, Serafina, that's not. A knock on the door interrupted them. The doctor had arrived. We're not done talking, Serafina said firmly, though she felt nervous. She had a strong feeling that the doctor's news would change everything. Cassian's face became calm again. Take the rest of the day off. We'll talk tomorrow. But tomorrow would be too late, because by then, Serafina would know for sure what she already suspected, that their one night together had created something that would keep them connected forever. As she watched Cassian leave, she placed a hand on her flat stomach. In a few months, she wouldn't be able to hide it. The real question was, would Cassian's fear push him away forever, Or would this news finally break down the walls he had spent his whole life building? The doctor's words echoed in her mind as she sat in her small Brooklyn apartment, staring at the ultrasound pictures on the table. Congratulations, Miss Kane. You're expecting twins. Twins. 2 babies, 2 tiny heartbeats fluttering on the screen like little butterflies. Her phone buzzed. Elowen was checking in again. Serafina had taken the rest of the week off, saying she had a virus. Cassian had been surprisingly kind about it, but his email had been cold and professional. Take all the time you need to recover. Your health is important to the company. Not important to him. Just to the company. She ran her fingers over the ultrasound pictures. She thought about her mother, raising her alone in this same neighborhood. It had taken so much strength. And now here she was, pregnant with twins. And the father? He was probably sitting in his big Manhattan apartment, buried in work, building more walls between them. Her doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole. Elowen was standing there, holding a bag from their favorite Chinese restaurant. I knew you wouldn't eat properly, Elowen said, coming in. She set the food on the table, then she saw the ultrasound pictures and froze. Oh my God. Yeah. Serafina's voice was soft. Twins. Elowen gasped. Girl, sit down before you fall down. When did you find out? Yesterday. Serafina sat on the couch as Elowen handed her a bowl of soup. I'm still trying to process it. And Cassian? Does he know? Serafina stirred her soup. How can he? He barely looks at me, and he won't even talk to me about personal things. Elowen took her hand. You have to tell him. I know, Serafina whispered, tears in her eyes. But what if he thinks I planned this? What if he thinks I'm trying to trap him? Elowen squeezed her hand. That man might be bad at feelings, but he's not dumb. Anyone who sees the way he looks at you knows how he really feels. Feelings aren't enough, Serafina whispered. Not when he's so determined to run from them. The next morning, Serafina went back to work. She couldn't hide forever. The longer she waited, the harder it would be. She arrived early. Cassian's office was dark, but she could see the golden sunrise reflecting off the glass buildings. She used to love this view. It used to mean success, proving she could make it in this city. Now, it just reminded her of him. You're back early, she turned. Cassian stood in the doorway looking tired. We need to talk. Something flickered in his eyes, concern, fear, but his voice was calm. Of course. About the Singapore deal? No, about us. Serafina took a deep breath. Cassian, I'm pregnant. Silence. He stared at her, his calm face breaking. She pulled out the ultrasound pictures. He moved closer, slowly. Twins, she added. His hands gripped the desk. Twins? I'm about 6 weeks along. He took a deep breath. You're carrying my children, Serafina. Of course you should be asking for something. What I want, she said carefully, is you, the real you, not the businessman, just you. Cassian crossed the room and placed his forehead against hers. I don't know how to be that man, he whispered. My father taught me love is a weakness, that it destroys everything. And what do you believe? Before he could answer, a knock on the door interrupted them. A worker stood there. The Singapore team is on the phone. They're threatening to cancel the deal. Cassian's face turned serious. I'll be right there. Serafina sighed. We need to finish this conversation. Later. When? After they're in college? Something sharp and scary flashed in Cassian's eyes. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Serafina shouted. But it's real, Cassian. These babies are real, and they need more than a father who only sees them between his big business deals. Cassian flinched, like she had hit him. I would never leave my children. There's more than one way to be gone, Serafina said softly. She thought of all the times she had wished her own father had been there for more than just sending money. Someone knocked on the door again. Cassian, his friend Orion called. Hurry up. Go, Serafina said, stepping back. Your big business needs you. She walked out of his office, holding her head high, ignoring the whispers from the people who had seen their argument. She rushed into the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and tried to calm down. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Cassian. "Dinner tonight, my place, 8 p.m., please." She stared at the message. Her hand touched her stomach. The babies were too small to feel yet, but knowing they were inside her changed everything. They deserved parents who were honest, who faced problems together. "Okay, 8 p.m., she replied. But as she worked through the day, a bad feeling crept into her heart. Something was going to go wrong. The Singapore business deal was falling apart. Cassian was too busy. And Serafina, she was carrying two babies who made everything even harder. By evening, dark clouds covered the sky over Manhattan, just like her stormy feelings. As she packed up her desk, she saw Cassian in his office talking to a woman she didn't know. The woman was crying. Cassian put a hand on her shoulder, comforting her. Something cold twisted in Serafina's stomach. She had seen that touch before, the same gentle way he had comforted her. Was this why he had been so distant? Had she been a fool to believe him? Thunder rumbled outside. Serafina made a decision. She pulled out her phone and typed quickly. "Something came up. Can't make dinner. We'll talk tomorrow." She didn't wait for a reply. She grabbed her things and left. As the elevator doors closed, she took one last look at Cassian's office. He was still comforting that woman, still being there for everyone except her. What Serafina didn't know was that the woman had just lost her mother to cancer. Cassian understood her pain because his own mother had died the same way. She didn't know that Cassian had spent the afternoon looking up the best baby doctors in New York. She didn't know he had already called his lawyer to set up a trust fund for the twins. But knowing things requires trust, and trust, like a storm, can be dangerous when it breaks. Cassian read Serafina's message again. "Something came up. Can't make dinner. We'll talk tomorrow." The words felt wrong, hollow. He had seen her leave the office, had seen the hurt in her eyes before the elevator doors shut. Orion walked into Cassian's penthouse carrying a bottle of scotch. "You're going to wear a hole in your floor," he said, watching Cassian pace. "What happened?" "Lisa Morton's mother died," Cassian sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Cancer. She broke down in my office right before Serafina left." Orion nodded in understanding. "And Serafina saw you comforting Lisa." "She didn't just see it," Cassian muttered. "She completely misunderstood." He gripped his phone. "I should have explained. I should have gone after her." "But you didn't," Orion finished. He poured a drink for both of them. "Because you're Cassian Williams, and chasing after women isn't what you do." "She's carrying my children, Orion. Twins." The words still felt unreal. "This isn't just about my reputation anymore." "Then what's stopping you?" Cassian stared out the window at the shining city lights. "My father called today. The board is worried about the Singapore deal. They're questioning my focus, my commitment. And finding out you're having twins with your secretary won't help," Orion said dryly. "Executive assistant," Cassian corrected. Orion smirked. "This isn't funny." "No, it's tragic," Orion said. "You're so scared of turning into your father that you don't see you're already doing it." Cassian felt like Orion had punched him. "I am nothing like him." Orion sighed. "Your father chose work over family, over your mom, over you, every time. He missed birthdays, anniversaries, your graduation, all because his business came first." "I haven't missed anything," Cassian said defensively. "The babies aren't even born yet. But you're already choosing, Alex. Every time you let Serafina walk away, every time you pick work first, you're making the same choice he did." Across town, Serafina sat on her bathroom floor, sick again. Morning sickness, she had learned, was a terrible name. It wasn't just in the morning. Her phone buzzed. Cassian. His 15th missed call, a soft knock on the door. "I brought crackers and ginger ale," Elowen said. "And before you say you're fine, I saw your face at work today. Open up." Serafina pulled open the door. Elowen smiled. "I thought you had a date." "Please, like I'd pick some Tinder guy over my best friend in trouble." Elowen walked in, setting down the snacks. What happened? Nothing happened, Serafina mumbled, sipping the ginger ale. That's the problem. I'm carrying his babies, and he's still playing business games while I throw up everything I've eaten since high school. He did ask you to dinner, this Elowen pointed out. After I saw him with another woman, Serafina's voice cracked, looking at her the same way he looked at me. Did you ask him about it? I shouldn't have to ask. Serafina stood up too fast. The room spun. She grabbed the counter for support. Okay, that's it, Elowen said. You're going to bed, and I'm calling the doctor. This isn't normal. I'm fine. Serafina's words cut off as her knees buckled. Serafina! Elowen's voice sounded far away. Stay with me. I'm calling an ambulance. Cassian was getting ready for bed when his phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Mr. Williams, this is Mount Sinai Hospital. You are listed as Serafina Wren's emergency contact. The world stopped. She's been admitted. Severe dehydration, complications with her pregnancy. She's asking for you. Cassian grabbed his keys. I'm on my way. For the first time ever, Cassian Williams ignored a business call. Instead, he held Serafina's hand, and for the first time, he truly understood what mattered most. The bright lights of the Manhattan skyline shined through the hospital window, but they didn't feel as special anymore. The big business Cassian had spent his whole life building suddenly felt unimportant. All that mattered now was the tiny heartbeats of the babies growing inside the woman he loved. Love. The word he had always been afraid of finally felt right. Now he had to prove it, to Serafina, to their children, and to himself. But first, they had to get through the night. As the machines beeped softly, reminding him of the fight his babies were facing, Cassian realized something. All his smart business ideas, all his money, and all his power meant nothing when it came to what really scared him. Losing the people he loved before he could show them how much they meant to him. Morning light streamed through the window, making Serafina's face glow softly. She was still asleep. Cassian hadn't left her side all night. His laptop sat on the windowsill as he worked remotely, but every few minutes he would look at the monitor that showed their baby's heartbeats. You look terrible, said Orion, walking in with 2 cups of coffee. The board meeting starts in an hour. I'm not going, Cassian said, taking the coffee but never looking away from Serafina. Orion raised his eyebrows. You're missing an important board meeting. Who are you, and what have you done with Cassian Williams? The Singapore team can wait. The board can wait, Cassian said firmly. She can't. What should I tell them? Tell them I have a family emergency. The words felt right. Family. His family. A small sound came from the bed. Serafina's eyes opened and found his immediately. You're still here? She asked, surprised. I'm not going anywhere, he said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I got hit by a truck, she said, trying to sit up but wincing. What time is it? Don't you have the board meeting? Orion is handling it, Cassian said, squeezing her hand. My priority is right here. Tears filled Serafina's eyes. Cassian, I mean it, Serafina, he said, his voice full of emotion. I spent my whole life trying to prove something to my father, to the board, to the world. But last night, watching those monitors, praying our babies would be okay, I realized I was proving myself to the wrong people. A nurse and Dr. Aldrich Voss walked in. Good morning, Miss Kane. Let's check on the little ones. Cassian moved a step back, but Serafina held his hand. He stayed, watching as the doctor examined her, his heart pounding. The twins' heartbeats are stable, Dr. Aldrich Voss said, smiling. But then her face turned serious. We need to talk about your care plan. Multiple pregnancies are always risky and with your complications. What do we need to do? Cassian asked quickly. Strict bed rest for at least a month. Regular checkups, no work, no stress. The doctor looked at both of them. I know you both have important jobs, but these babies have to come first. They are, Cassian said. He turned to Serafina. Move in with me. What? She stared at him. My penthouse has plenty of space. You'll have people to take care of you. I can work from home. Cassian, she said, shaking her head, you can't just change your whole life for this. Watch me, he said, his blue eyes full of determination. I'm not asking as your boss or just as the father of your children. I'm asking as a man who's finally ready to admit that he's in love with you. The room went silent. Even the doctor and nurse stopped moving. Love? Serafina whispered. Love, he confirmed. The kind that scares me because it's bigger than business deals, board meetings, or billion-dollar mergers. The kind that makes me want to be better. A knock at the door broke the moment. Elowen peeked in, looking nervous. Cassian, the Singapore team is threatening to go to the press. They say you broke the contract by missing the meeting. Cassian straightened, but didn't let go of Serafina's hand. Get me my phone. He put the call on speaker. Mr. Daxton Wu. Cassian Williams, Mr. Daxton Wu's voice came through. Your absence at today's meeting? I'm at the hospital with the mother of my unborn children, Cassian interrupted. If that's a problem for you, if you can't understand that family comes first, then maybe we shouldn't be working together. Silence. Then Mr. Daxton Wu laughed. Ah, fatherhood changes a man, doesn't it? My wife taught me the same lesson 20 years ago. Take care of your family, Mr. Williams. We can reschedule. Cassian hung up. Serafina stared at him. Did you just risk $1 billion deal for me? For us, he corrected, and I'd do it again. A nurse came in. Mr. Williams, your father is here. He insists on seeing you. Cassian felt Serafina tense. His father, the man who believed love was weakness. Send him in, Cassian said, standing protectively beside Serafina. William Williams Sr. entered, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. So it's true, you missed the board meeting for this? For my family, Cassian corrected. Dad, meet Serafina Wren, the woman I love, the mother of your grandchildren. Grandchildren? William Sr. looked surprised. Twins, Serafina said, placing a hand on her belly. William Sr. was silent for a moment. Then he said, You know what this means. The board will have questions. The press will go wild. I don't care, Cassian said. For once, I'm choosing what matters. If that costs me the company, so be it. To everyone's shock, his father laughed. You sound like your mother. She told me I was a fool for putting business first. I didn't listen. And now, he sighed, maybe you're braver than I was. The tension faded. The monitor beeped steadily, filling the room with the sound of new beginnings. Later, as the sun set over Manhattan, Serafina slept peacefully while Cassian worked nearby. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. Your mother would be proud of you today. I know I am. Cassian looked at Serafina, at her hand cradling their babies. He had once believed love made you weak, but now he knew the truth. Love was what made you strong enough to choose what truly mattered. A week later, Serafina stood in their new bedroom in Cassian's penthouse. The Manhattan skyline sparkled outside. She still couldn't believe she had moved in. Cassian walked in with a stack of books. The last of your books are in the study, he said. I still think you should be in bed. If I stay in bed any longer, I'll crazy, Serafina said, rubbing her belly. The doctor said light movement is okay. Cassian pulled her into his arms. Get used to being taken care of, because that's my new job. His phone buzzed. Serafina saw the way he hesitated. Take it, she said. You still have a company to run. He kissed her forehead before stepping away to answer. Orion walked in, carrying a pile of wedding magazines. Your dad sent these. Apparently your mom had a whole collection. Serafina froze. Marriage? Tell Dad thanks, Cassian said, setting them aside. But we're doing things our way. He didn't pressure her and said gently, No rush, no worries. We'll figure things out together. Orion, Cassian's friend, raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Instead, he brought up another topic. The press is asking for official statements about your relationship. The PR team is having a hard time handling them. No statements, Cassian said firmly. Our personal life is private. But the charity gala is next month. You always go, and if Serafina comes as more than your assistant, people will notice. Serafina's heart sank. The Williams Enterprises Charity Gala was a huge event. Cassian had to attend, but she didn't want to face all the whispers and stares. "We'll skip it," Cassian decided, surprising both Serafina and Orion. Orion looked shocked. "Alex, you've never missed it. Your father won't be happy. He'll understand. Serafina's health is more important." Cassian stood behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Besides, she'll be almost 5 months pregnant by then. The stress wouldn't be good for her or the babies." Warmth spread through Serafina's chest. Few people saw this side of Cassian, the man who chose love and family over business and tradition. After Orion left, they sat in the living room. Cassian had gotten a huge couch so Serafina could be comfortable while resting. She lay with her head in his lap as he stroked her hair gently. "This is really happening, isn't it?" she murmured. "Us living together, having twins." Cassian's voice was soft but unsure. "Are you having second thoughts?" Serafina shook her head and placed his hand on her belly. "No, just amazed. A few months ago, I was just your assistant trying not to fall for my boss." He smiled. "You were never just anything to me. Even when I tried to fight it, you were always special." Just then, she felt something, a tiny flutter in her stomach. "Oh," Cassian tensed. "What? What's wrong?" Tears filled her eyes as she pressed his hand against her belly. "I think I just felt one of them move." They waited, holding their breath, but it didn't happen again. Still, the moment felt magical. It was their first connection with their babies. "I love you," Cassian whispered, his voice full of emotion. "All of you." The rest of the day was peaceful. Cassian worked in his home office while Serafina rested and organized their new home. Their friend Elowen stopped by with homemade soup and office gossip. Even Cassian's father, Mr. Williams, called to check on them, though he sounded awkward about it. At night, as they got ready for bed, Serafina noticed Cassian seemed distracted. "What's wrong?" she asked. He hesitated, then sighed. "The company's board wants me to step back from running things while we focus on the pregnancy." Serafina sat up, alarmed. "What? They can't do that. The company is your life." "No," he said, pulling her back into his arms. "You're my life, you and our children. The company is just something I can reshape to fit our family's needs." He gently rubbed her belly. "I've been thinking maybe this is a chance to build something better, a company that values family." Serafina looked at him in the soft light. She saw not just the strong businessman, but the man he was becoming. "Whatever you decide, I'm here," she said softly. "We're here." He kissed her, a kiss full of love and promises. Outside, the city lights twinkled, but the real treasure was right there, in their bed, in their love, and in the family they were building together. The doctor had a serious look as she studied the ultrasound screen. At 20 weeks, Serafina's pregnancy was reaching an important stage. "Baby A is much smaller than baby B," Dr. Aldrich Voss said, pointing at the screen. "This could be serious." Cassian squeezed Serafina's hand. They had been so careful, following every doctor's order. "What can we do?" he asked. "We need to watch them closely. More checkups and maybe even a hospital stay if things get worse." Before she could explain further, loud noises filled the hallway. Reporters had gathered outside the room, cameras flashing. "Someone leaked our appointment schedule," Serafina whispered. "I'll take care of this," Cassian said, his voice full of anger. He stepped outside and shut the door behind him. Serafina tried to listen to Dr. Aldrich Voss, but she kept worrying about Cassian. The press had been following them non-stop. "Serafina?" the doctor asked. "Are you listening?" "Sorry," Serafina said, forcing herself to focus. Just then, Elowen rushed in, looking worried. "You need to see this." She held up her phone. The news headline read, "Williams Enterprises in Crisis, Board Calls Emergency Meeting." Below the headline was a picture of Cassian's father looking furious as he entered the company's headquarters. Serafina's heart sank. The Singapore merger, they knew delaying the deal was causing problems, but this was worse than they thought. "Cassian needs you," Elowen said softly. He's trying to handle everything, the press, the board, but he needs to focus on the company right now. Serafina took a deep breath. Doctor, can we finish this later? Dr. Aldrich Voss looked concerned. Your pregnancy needs attention. I understand, Serafina said, struggling to sit up. But so does his company. Just give us a few hours. In the hallway, Cassian was facing a crowd of reporters. His voice was strong and firm. My personal life is not up for discussion. If you want to talk about business, I'm happy to arrange a press conference. A reporter pushed forward. Is the board trying to remove you as CEO? Serafina's heart stopped. Without thinking, she stepped forward, drawing everyone's attention. Cameras flashed wildly. Miss Kane, is it true you're having twins? Was this pregnancy planned? Are you getting married? Cassian wrapped an arm around her protectively. The cameras caught the moment, and it would be on every news site the next day. My family, Cassian said firmly, is not for public entertainment. Yes, we are expecting twins. Yes, we're facing medical challenges. And yes, the company is changing. But my priorities are exactly where they should be. Security arrived, pushing the reporters away. In the sudden quiet, Serafina could feel Cassian trembling, not in fear, but in anger. They followed us to a doctor's visit, he muttered, to our baby's ultrasound. Serafina placed a hand on his chest. The board meeting can wait. His face softened. What did the doctor say about the twins? Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. A message from Orion. Board demanding immediate action. Your father is trying to hold them off. Go, Serafina said firmly. The babies and I will be fine. Your company needs you. You need me too, he said, torn between his duty and his family. I need you to be who you are, she said. And who you are is a man who faces challenges head on. Go fight for your company. Just come home to us after. He kissed her right there in the hallway. Always. After he left, Elowen helped Serafina back inside. Dr. Aldrich Voss was waiting, but before she could speak, Serafina gasped. Something's wrong. Pain shot through her belly. It felt different this time. The next hours were a blur. Monitors beeped, nurses rushed around, and fear grew. The smaller twin's heartbeat was weak. The bigger twin was in distress. Dr. Aldrich Voss's voice was urgent. We need to admit you now. The next 24 hours are critical. Serafina really wanted to call Cassian. She wished he was with her, but she knew he was busy fighting for their future in a different way. The big meeting with the company's board was very important. It could decide what would happen to the company he had worked so hard to build. I called your mom, Elowen said softly, holding Serafina's hand. She's on her way from Brooklyn. Tears rolled down Serafina's cheeks. I'm scared, Elowen. What if I lose them? Hey, Elowen said firmly. You are the strongest person I know. And those babies, they are half you and half Cassian Williams. If that isn't a strong team, I don't know what is. Across town, Cassian stood in front of the board members. His father stood beside him. The board was angry. You are not focused. You care more about your personal life than the company. You might ruin the Singapore deal, they accused. Cassian's father, William, raised his hand to stop them. My son has shown more wisdom in the past month than I did in 30 years of running this company. He is choosing family over money, love over power. If you can't see that this makes him a better leader, then maybe it's time for more than just leadership changes. The room went silent. William had always been known as a tough businessman, but today he was standing up for his son's choice to put family first. Cassian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and read a message from Elowen. His heart stopped. Come now. The twins. He looked at his father. No words were needed. William Sr. nodded once and turned back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is over, he said. My son has more important matters to attend to. If anyone has a problem, you can talk to me. Cassian ran out. The drive to the hospital felt like the longest of his life. Every red light was torture. Every slow car made him anxious. Finally, he arrived and rushed to Serafina's room. She was surrounded by machines. Her mother held one of her hands. Elowen held the other. "If the babies?" Cassian asked, his voice shaking. "Still fighting," Serafina whispered, reaching for him. "Just like their father." He took her hand and kissed it. Outside the window, dark clouds covered the sky. But in that room, filled with worried faces and beeping machines, two hearts beat together. And somewhere inside Serafina, two tiny hearts tried to do the same. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Cassian promised, pressing his forehead to Serafina's. Hospital time felt different. Cassian had spent 3 days staring at machines, counting heartbeats, waiting for news. Serafina slept on and off, never letting go of her belly, where their twins were fighting to stay strong. Dr. Aldrich Voss walked in during the morning checkup. "The smaller twins' health is improving. The medicine is working. If this continues, we may have turned a corner." Hope sparked in Cassian's chest. He had learned to be careful with hope. Good news had often been followed by bad news. But today, something felt different. The sun over Manhattan seemed brighter. The air felt lighter. "Cassian," Serafina's voice was soft and sleepy. "What time is it? Early." He brushed a curl from her forehead. "The doctor was just here. The babies are doing better." Serafina placed her hand over his. "I can feel them. They're stronger today." A knock at the door interrupted them. Orion, Cassian's business partner, walked in, carrying his laptop. "I'm sorry," he said, "but we need to talk about the Singapore deal." Cassian was about to say no, but Serafina squeezed his hand. "Go ahead," she said. "I want to hear too." Orion sat down and opened his laptop. "Good news. Mr. Daxton Wu is more understanding than we expected. Your father's speech at the meeting helped, but they need an answer. Either we agree to the deal under new terms, or we walk away. They want to know by tomorrow." The old Cassian would have panicked. He would have thought that this deal was the most important thing in his life. But after 3 days of waiting by Serafina's side, watching his children fight to survive, he had new priorities. "What are the new terms?" he asked. Orion explained. "They want a slower merger, shared leadership, and something surprising. They want to make family-friendly policies part of the company. Mr. Daxton Wu was impressed by your dedication to family." Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "They are changing their whole company because of us?" "Because of you," Cassian corrected, kissing her hand. "You showed me a better way to lead. Now we can show others." Another knock. William Sr. walked in, looking tired but proud. "The board made their decision," he announced. Cassian sat up, ready for a fight, but his father smiled. "They voted to keep you as CEO, and they support the family policies and the New Deal." Before anyone could react, a machine in the room beeped loudly. Dr. Aldrich Voss rushed in, but she was smiling. "The babies," she said. "Both of them have fully stabilized. The smaller twin has caught up. I don't want to say miracle, but it's a miracle," Serafina's mother declared. Tears filled Cassian's eyes. He looked at Serafina, and she smiled through her own tears. "Can we see them?" he asked. Dr. Aldrich Voss nodded and prepared the ultrasound machine. The room went quiet as the screen showed their babies. There they were, moving, growing, their tiny hearts beating together. "Look at that," the doctor said. "They're holding hands." Everyone stared. On the screen, the twins were reaching for each other, just like their parents had. "Like father, like children," William Sr. murmured. 3 months later, the boardroom was no longer a place for business meetings. It had been turned into a baby shower. Serafina, now 34 weeks pregnant, sat at the head of the table, glowing with happiness. Elowen handed her a fancy gift. "This one is from the Singapore office." Inside were 2 tiny silk dresses. A note read, "For hope and grace, future leaders." Serafina looked at Cassian. "We haven't even told them the names yet." "I think they guessed," he chuckled. Just then, Serafina gasped. She held her belly. "Cassian, I think it's time." Everything became busy. Elowen called the doctor. Orion got the car. William Sr. stayed calm and helped. "Breathe," he told Serafina. "Your mother was in labor for 20 hours." But Hope and Grace didn't want to wait. By the time they reached the hospital, the twins were almost here. At 3:47 a.m., Hope was born, raising her tiny fist like a champion. 2 minutes later, Grace arrived, quiet but just as strong. Cassian held his daughters, his heart full. "Hello, my loves, we've been waiting for you." As the sun rose over Manhattan, Cassian, Serafina, Hope, and Grace sat together as a family. They had faced storms, but love had guided them through. And now, their story was just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.